Yes, welcome again. Welcome again. Welcome again. We had to restart the live because I guess we're struggling to join this one, but hopefully, if we give a couple minutes, this would be, yeah. Yeah.
Hi,
Finally.
finally. I was wondering what's going down.
You see, sometimes I find it difficult to fully understand the nitty gritties behind Instagram sometimes. So I totally understand that it was probably network or something, but it's good to finally have you, madam. Welcome.
Thank you. It's definitely good to be here.
You're welcome. It's our pleasure to have you once again. Let me officially do my invites because we did that before, but we had to restart all over again. So everyone who is part of this, welcome to the Lend Your Voice 1000 Voices for Autism series. My name is Epic, and I'll be your host to this conversation. The beautiful guest you can see at the other end of the conversation is none other than Madam Oluwadamilola. It's our pleasure to have you. Welcome again, Madam. How you doing? How you doing this beautiful afternoon?
I'm very well, thank you. It's always a pleasure to share. Something I'm passionate about to always speak about. So, yeah, I'm so glad to be here. How are you too?
I'm very well. I'm very well. Thank you. We are honored to have you. Thank you so much for honoring our invitation at this time. We understand that these things can get pretty tricky, schedules and managing schedules and being busy and all
Mhm,
that. But
mhm,
once again, a very big thank you to you for honoring our invitation because it's clear that you understand the cause, you understand why we're doing this
mhm,
to amplify voices, to advocate for autism, and to ensure that these conversations are hard to keep people in the know of what is happening and how best to manage the situations across board. Again, welcome again, madam. We'll get
Thank you
straight
for
into the
having me.
conversation. I want to know so much about you. So I'll allow you to do the proper introduction because I already hyped. And I know it's not just, I already said a lot. Personally, I've done my research, right? So I said a lot of things and I said I'm going to leave the floor for you to do a proper introduction so the people understand why I'm excited to have this conversation. So, madam, the floor is yours. Let's get to know a little bit more about you.
Thank you very much. As my host already said, my name is Oluwadamilola Olukitibi Alaude. I am a behavior analyst. I'm also a qualified autism service practitioner supervisor, which means I'm qualified to provide services to individuals living with autism. I'm also qualified to offer trainings to ensure that it doesn't end with me, and there's so many other professionals going on with the work here. For me, why I'm so passionate about this practice is because I am so sure that these individuals are able to learn. How do I know? I've been doing this for 11 years now. So, yes, I can say for a fact that they're able to learn. It started off then, April 2014. And I was like, wow, okay, yeah, I got into it. And I discovered that, from 2 weeks of when I started working with these individuals, the skill they didn't have then, they're beginning to grasp the concepts. They're beginning to understand whatever it is, whatever concept, whatever skill I was trying to teach. So I said to myself, if they can learn, so why not? Yeah. And there's someone that I appreciate so much who says it's not if they can, it is when they can, because it's not a function of can they do it. They can do it, they just need more time to do it. So since I understood this concept, I would be there for that. When I would ensure that all the skills that I required, I keep putting in place. And 11 years down the line, I'm still here ensuring that when they are ready, they have all the necessary skills to to do what they need to do.
Impressive. Absolutely impressive. 11 years is a very long time. The wealth of experience. We cannot completely tap into everything in this conversation, but we hope to draw a few. We hope to draw from a few.
We'll
11
try,
years is a fine.
try as much.
11 years is a fine time of experience. But how did it all start for you? And why this space? Why this industry? What drew your attention to this? For some people, it's usually personal encounters, but we want to know yours. How did it all start for you and why this particular space? Why autism? Why neurodiversity?
Okay, great. I wouldn't have thought that I'll be in this space. I myself didn't know so much, aside the fact that I studied psychology, and then it was mentioned in one of our classrooms, yeah. But the picture that was painted while we were learning about this, it was totally different when I came into it. So how it started was, oh, I got out of service, I was waiting for a job, and during those times, you contact different aunties, uncles, and say, oh, I'm looking for a job. So
And you're being
I
told to drop a lot of TVs and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly, exactly. So someone stumbled on my CV and said, you know what? I mean, this is the kind of person I would like to work with because I mean, I've taught in schools, worked with children at different capacity, taking courses that had to do with children. And then I came into this field. At first, I was in my head, I had what they had taught us in school. And here I am with, in person. And I'm like, they're so different. Why do we have this kind of narrative when it is not entirely like that? For me, that was the first thing that drew me to this. I said, you know what? I would like to change the narrative because if I stood by what I've heard and what I'm seeing, and there are two different things, I want to be part of those people who drive that change to ensure that people understand it better, to ensure that a people have the right knowledge and not go with the kind of knowledge that I had. Coupled with the fact that when I started working with this population, I discovered that they could learn. We just need to be patient to teach them the way they can. Do you get? It's not a function of they not being able to learn. It's a function of knowing how and teaching them that same way, which is what drew me to this, which is what maintained my status here. And I told myself I needed to grow. If I want to do better, I have to, get more knowledge, get more experience. And I haven't looked back since then, really, because when I think about it, I see children that have impacted, I see professionals that have impacted. It makes me happy, and I want to keep impacting lives. Exactly why I'm still here.
Lovely, lovely. It's very important that you started off from a very inquisitive note that has now transitioned to a very passionate desire. More
Mhm.
than anything, the fact that you enjoy the process of impacting, which is what I want to dwell my next question on. Now,
Okay.
this in a space like Nigeria, which
Mhm.
you said while studying, as you said, it was different in university than when you got into real life.
Yeah.
Something also you said that caught my attention. You said if, no, not if, but when they learn, which is very, there's a lot of optimism in that, clearly stating that they can learn. Let's
Absolutely.
talk about the mindset of the average Nigerian family, right? What's the
Mhm.
work that goes into trying to sponsor or enable that mindset shift? Because it's an important facet of dealing with these situations. There are a lot of people that there are stereotypes around this. There are a lot of opinions that are very, very strong-willed about this. How do you go about managing shifting the mindset from a sad situation to something optimism, to something people should be optimistic about, to see that their children or the persons around them can do better in this space? How do you work around the mindset shift?
Okay, first off, I'd like to let families understand that they are first children, regardless of whatever it is that we might think they're having challenges with. They're first children, yeah? So let's approach it from that angle. Approach that this is your child. How would you treat any other child? You will extend love, right? And then they didn't come with, when I mean they now, I mean children generally, came as a blank slate. We impute into them whatever we want to see. And it's not different from individuals living with autism, really. It is not different. Yes, they have these challenges, but we still have to put in the work. Yeah. We still have to teach them what we need them to be able to do. We still have to teach them the culture of the families and so I like to approach family from the angle of, okay, so tell me about this child. Tell me all that you need to, all you know, all you've gathered over the years about your child. So, in the place of you telling me there's the things they can do, because most times they come from the things they cannot do. So, tell me about the things your child can do. If we come from that angle, then we see potentials, we see possibility. If they can do this, then they can do these other things. Yeah. And then I also go from the angle of, okay, these things that they can do. Yeah. How do we then link them to the things that they can't do to ensure that they're able to do what they can do? Right. I also like to ask parents to say, why wait? If I feel at a certain stage that my child should be able to do this, I wouldn't wait till whenever. I would start imputing the skill, which is what I've said. Impute the skill so that they will be able to do. perform whatever skill you want them to be able to perform. Because what I've seen over time is people say, oh, it's spiritual attack. It is this, it is that, it is my village people. How about we leave that, right? And start pouring into them what we want to see. It's what they say, garbage in, garbage out. If you leave the child and you're thinking, oh, the child can't do this, the child can't do that, that's what it's going to be. The child won't be able to do it. How about you approach it from the angle of, oh, the child is not doing this right now because they haven't been taught the skill to do it. So you approach it from that angle and you start teaching the skill. Yes, for some people it takes more time. And you will even be surprised that sometimes it wouldn't take as long as you think it would. It's only taking that long because we haven't started putting in the work. Once we start, we have a mind shift from the negativity to the positivity to the possibility. Then it propels us to put in the work. And when we start putting in the work, we are already setting ourselves up, setting our child up for success in the long run.
Well said, absolutely well said. It's a challenge, and it takes a lot of courage to attempt to do these things. As you said, people are skeptical. People want to limit naturally the children and say, this one something, and just undermine their capabilities. But I like the fact that you've emphasized on their very evident ability to learn. So we
Yeah,
should just it's the job of the parent, the caregiver, to try to teach, right? Let's get
exactly.
to a little bit of the work you have done, right? You're the founder of Therapy on the Wheels. Let's talk about that. What happens with Therapy on the Wheels? How's that going? How's it been over the years? What are the successes that you have encountered along the way? What are the challenges that you have encountered along the way? Let's get into know a little bit of the work that you have done, madam.
Okay, I would like to start off from why in the first place.
Lovely.
I understand the sensitivity around this topic. I understand parents trying to protect integrity, some confidentiality, and they would rather say, oh, I don't want anybody to know this, I don't want anybody to do that. But in my years of experience, I know that if we keep doing that, we're only prolonging, when this child is supposed to acquire a certain skill. So I told myself, I said, you know what, even if the child is not in a center, for instance, even if the child is not being treated specially in the school because you don't want anybody to associate special needs with your child, this child still needs to get help. And I told myself, regardless of where you decide to keep your child, in a school, at home, wherever, the child should still access evidence-based services, which is why Therapy on Wheels came to be. As the name implies, we're moving around. We're moving around. Regardless of where your child is, we want to be able to help your child. We want to be able to give your child and the families the skills that they require. We like to go on basically because we know that it's the teamwork that makes the dream work. Yeah. It's easier when we have therapy sessions in the home setting where a parent or a caregiver is able to watch and see how we put in the work. Because, it's not enough to say, oh, they can learn. It makes more sense when you show them they can learn. You show from the very beginning, and now they can tell you, oh, really? I see that initially this child was struggling with this, but now they're able to do this without, lifting a muscle. So that's why Therapy on Wheels came to be. And so far, we've been able to change parents and caregivers' mindset to they can't do it to, oh, I will teach them, I will work with them to be able to do this, because that's what we have held their hands over the years, and we've shown them that if you do it like this, all you just need to do is to be consistent. And what I've also found out is that consistency sometimes is not about the child. It's about the individuals in the lives of the children. We are the ones who find it hard to stay consistent. Yes, this child might struggle. Yes, it might be a challenge, but it is left for us to stay consistent in teaching, because it is in this consistency that the results will show. It is in this consistency that we're able to record progress. And that is what we try to teach. That is what we try to show. That is what we try to exemplify with Therapy on Wheels. And then we'll go on to say, oh, you've seen me do it, you try it. Even when I'm not there, you do it. And then we have situations where parents will call us and say, oh, see, I did this one, and this child did this child did that. There was this parent who had to record their child to send to me when the child was looking at erosion, and the child said, Mama, erosion. The mom was blown away. I'm like, oh, they didn't know he could pick up things and everything. I said, those are the things of working on social cues, social awareness. These are all the things These are the skills being generalized in settings aside the therapy setting. So this kind of progresses, this kind of stories are what keeps us going. And to hear that our clients are in their various schools doing excellently well. They go for spelling bee and they excel. They go for, these things are things that fuels our passion, that makes us say, you know what, there's really no turning back. We're going to keep doing as much as we can do.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant work, brilliant work. I love how you have highlighted the importance of successful milestones involved in the process. Consistency, very key part. And a lot of times, as you said, it's really not because they are not taking in the information properly. Consistency tends to stop because who's the people responsible for caregiving get tired, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's because sometimes people like to put a cap on expected realities, right? So when people say I have for some certain amount of years, then I just aware of how important is it to let the success that is recorded when rendering therapy to a child to just not put a timeline to it, because people try to monitor things. After 1 year will stop, after 2 years will stop. How important is it to ignore time frames and just do the work?
It is, if you ask me, I think it's the most important part here, ignoring time frame, because it's not you, the caregiver, who is expected to be able to perform a certain skill. If it was you, then maybe you can put a cap on when you should for yourself, but it's not you now, it's the child. We always say that when something is going to happen, it's totally dependent on the child. However, it's also dependent on the caregiver because you have to stay consistent. Our children are very smart. They can pick up some cues even though we think they can't. They know when we're tired, they know when we're drained, and they're just they're there waiting for when you're tired so they can go off. But if you stay consistent, if you keep doing it, because you really never know when, right? You never know if it's the day that you decide to be tired and say, I'm giving up. That's the day that the child is going to acquire that skill. That's the day the child is going to give it back to you exactly the way you've been working so hard for. Because we do not know, we can't put a timeline to it. We still have to keep on. We have to stay consistent if we really want to see the progress. If it's about us, maybe we can say, oh, at this time I'm done. But it's not about us. It's about our learners. It's about the children that we work with. It's about the future, because a child at 5 years is definitely different from a child at 15. Imagine a child struggling with a certain concept at 5. If not properly managed, if skills are not taught, let's see what the child then looks like at 15. For me, that's one of the things I tell myself. It's better to do it now than to get tired and then try to do it later. It gets really harder to undo later. Why not stay through now to ensure that this skill that you're teaching, the child learns it before moving on to something else? So it is important that we stay consistent. It is important that we look at the bigger picture, actually, looking at the bigger picture, see what the skill you're teaching can spiral into. Because if you think about it, you're teaching one skill. It's not only that skill in itself. It is a ripple effect. It springs onto, okay, you're teaching a child to use their words. Imagine so many things that using their words can help a child achieve. Instead of the child crying, they can tell you what's going on. If something is wrong, the child can come to it. If the child has a need, they can use the words. So just using the words, as we think, can help the child navigate so many other situations, be it social or family. Just think about it. So when we look at the bigger picture and the possible progress, it helps us to keep going and say we can't stop now until progress is achieved. And it is not linear. It is not a one-way something. There's always
We
a curve. There are always curves and like so. Having this in mind, forehand helps you know that. I mean, it could get rocky, it could get smooth, and be prepared to navigate all through these situations because life in itself, it's not a smooth sail. There are different things. So we want to prepare them. We want to ensure that they're equipped to navigate the life that we find ourselves living right now.
Well said, madam. Well said, madam. To everyone who is part of this conversation, our guest is the amazing Mrs. Oluwadamilola. And so far, we're about 30 minutes in. I just wanted to put it out there. If you have questions for madam, please do also drop in the comment section. We're taking them as the conversation goes forward. Interesting conversation so far. They're saying quite a number of important things, which we'll get right into. But yes, if you have any questions you'd like to ask, any kind of information you would like to learn, particularly with regards to what she said, or anything you want her to throw more light on, please do also drop it in the comment section. And before we round off this conversation, should definitely be taking them. Madam, we'll get back into something that you said. You started to put you mentioned couple age differences. How it's for how a 5-year-old is different from a 15-year-old. You're a behavioral expert. You've done this for quite some years. Let's take it back to the younger generations. And there's something that we see. There's a lot of conversation around, and that is recurring when it comes to parents, right? People are usually shy to accept that their child is on the spectrum and all that, that tends to delay diagnosis. I want you to highlight a little bit the importance of spotting these things early and early diagnosis and early cases of therapy for a child. How important is it? What are the chances to get more successful results on the therapy being applied to the child when it is detected earlier than later?
I'm glad you asked that question. And while you were asking, this is what comes to my mind. It's a neurodevelopmental delay, right? It's not non-existent. It is just a delay, which means that if things are done, they could be catching up, right? So it is important that we spot these signs early. Why? If my child is 1 year, for instance, and I know that these are the milestones that my child ought to have reached at 1, but they aren't there yet, right? I figure it out early and I start pumping them. I'm not waiting for them for it to click. I start teaching, right? Imagine when I start teaching, that means I'm gradually closing the gap. The gap is already there, but I'm gradually closing the gap. Let's say 1 year now, or let me even say 2 years. My child isn't even doing what a 1 year should be doing. And then I figure that out, I start teaching it. Remember, the child will not be 2 years forever. The child goes on and becomes 3 years. So now there's a milestone for 2 years, there's a milestone for 3 years. The gap is there. Because I've noticed early and I start working on it, it gives me ample time to start bridging the gap, to start bridging the gap, to start bridging the gap. Because whether we like it or not, year keeps going in and the age keeps changing. The expectations are there. If they don't meet 2 years, it is there unmet, they will soon turn 3. If 3 years milestones are there unmet, they will turn 4, they will turn 5, and then the gap keeps widening. But if we figure it out early and we start teaching all the necessary skills, there's every likelihood that they start catching up in bits. They start catching up in bits, and then we're bridging in the gap. So let's say this is just an example, and it's not anything. Let's say by 3 years, because I figured it out, I'm now able to push my child to reach 2 years milestone, even though they are 3. But at least I've been able to reach some that by 4, let's say they are meeting for 3, they are 5. Let's say we now have a 1 year difference. But look at if we don't do anything. They have 2 years, there's a 1 year difference. They turn 3, there's a 2 years, they turn 4. The differences keeps increasing. Maybe people think, oh, as they grow, they'll get matured and then they'll catch up. That's what people keep saying. It happened to person, hey, it happened to your grandfather, it happened to your grandmother, and they started talking at 5 years, 7 years or something. It's not just about talking. There are so many other skills. And when we started knowing this, we then figured out, oh, so this person that was in my class who was having some form of social awkwardness, even though they can talk, yeah, even though they can do all this, they still had these other skills that they did not develop because nobody took it upon themselves to teach the skills. So whether we like it or not, the gaps are there. What do we want to do with this information? So it is important that we know early so that we can start teaching the necessary skills as against waiting for them to catch up the skills. And there's something I always say to parents: for a start, ignore the label. Is there a challenge? Is your child struggling with something? Think about it. We have neurotypical children who have lesson teachers. Why do they have lesson teachers? Why can't they just do well with what's being taught in the classroom? Why do we need to bring extra support? So if we think it's okay to give a neurotypical extra support, then why shouldn't we give a neurodivergent the extra support that they need? They are both extra support, they are just different. So if we look at it from that angle, that my child needs extra support and then I give the extra support, it makes it easier. It makes it easier for everyone. Look at it from the angle of what are my child's challenges? What are the challenges that my child is having at this time? And then approach it from that angle instead of coming from, oh, the child has autism or doesn't have autism. Start off with what are you seeing? This is my child is 5 years. What is my child unable to do? If you come in from that angle, it is easier to seek help. It is easier to seek professional guidance, because then what is driving you is to ensure that your child is helped, to navigate these challenges that they're experiencing at different ages. That's what I like to tell parents, really.
Well said, madam. It's very unique the light you have brought into this conversation. Ignoring the labels is something it's a direction I've not really thought about this conversation. Because one thing I like that you said, it's what's your child not capable of? Let's focus on that and how we can fix that instead of looking for just a label to just mumble and just put. No, it's important that these issues are addressed independently, because across, even on the spectrum, across different, it's not common. The situation with child A is definitely not the same with child B and child C. And I like how you
Absolutely.
have, yeah, I like how you have thrown light with regards to that. You're an active person in this space. There's a recurring question, right? When people have these conversations, and which I
Mm.
want to take you, because I think I did a little bit of digging here and there, and your wealth of experience is one that I'm trying to exploit at this point. Walk us through the differences between autism, ADHD, and dyslexia. Because people tend to have these conversations where they mix things up, and there's a lot.
Hello. Hello. I think I'm losing you.
Misdiagnosis. There's a lot of misdiagnosis and all that. Help us throw more light on the differences, on the primary differences. You with me? You can hear me, right, madam?
Yes, I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
Okay. Oh, love it, love it. Okay, so say help us throw more light on the major differences between ADHD, autism, and dyslexia, because there's usually a lot of mix-up and misdiagnosis, and when people see some traits, they call it some other thing. What are particular things to note, to look out for, to tell the differences between these three distinct neurodivergent challenges?
Okay, I would just point out something, because really to have accurate diagnosis, it requires a multidisciplinary team, right? To have accurate diagnosis. However, if you're looking at autism, for instance, it cuts across three different domains, although there is a fourth one now, but I will go into the three domains, right? We have the social interaction skills. Social interaction will be that a child is able to pick up social cues, because just think about a baby, for instance. You're smiling at the baby understands smiling and then smile back at you. Those are social cues. That's the form of interaction going on there, right? You're looking at the child is able to look at you. You turn your eyes to somewhere else, the child is able to follow the eye and see whatever it is you're trying to lead them to in the
Yeah,
environment.
yeah,
That angle of the social interaction before we then get into having conversations, interacting with people via words. There are the non-verbal interaction, which will go under the social interaction. And then we also have the communication in itself, being able to communicate functionally, being able to communicate effectively, to say that I need something when I need it, or to say I do not need something when I do not need it, using my words for what they are meant for. That will be under that is where communication will be. And also communication could be non-verbal too. You know how when they were raising us, your parents don't need to tell you something. When they just look at you, you can tell that they're trying
yeah,
to tell you something. When you point to something, they can tell, oh, you want me to go get this. Those different kind of communication come in there. We also have the behaviors, right? Some of children who are on the autism spectrum have some behavioral patterns that they follow, rigidity, inflexibility that they follow. And you're wondering, oh, why are they doing this? Since to them, it's functional for them. It is just we neurotypicals that cannot understand the functionality of these people. I will give you an example. Where there are two doors to a house, for instance, and because we constantly use a particular door, but this day, let's say the door isn't functioning or someone is working at the door, we need to use another door. To us, it's no biggie. But to a child who is on the spectrum, is wondering, why do I have to change my routine? Why can't I just use the door? Then it could be something. So for children with autism, when you're looking at autism diagnosis, you want to look at these three domains: the social interaction, their behaviors, and then the communication. There is also one which is the sensory related needs. For instance, a child needs to steam, a child needs to rock, to regulate themselves. For us, some of these things we see are non-functional, but for them, it helps them regulate. It helps them, do away with the environment for a bit and be able to know where they are in the space. Sensory sensitivity could cut across different things: vestibular, proprioception, a smell and everything. So these domains are where we can put autism diagnosis. And in the real sense, a child can't have symptom on one domain and would qualify for autism diagnosis. No. If your child is only having issues with communication, for instance, the child can't qualify for autism diagnosis. It has a touch up on some of all these domains that I've mentioned at different level, which is why we say autism is a spectrum. You get, some of children can be at the far end on the spectrum, while some can just be on the mild end. So because there are different things to look at, that's why there's a spectrum, and that's why it's autism spectrum disorder. But if you're looking at ADHD, you're looking at ADHD from impulsivity, hyperactivity, and inattention, right? But you cannot just look at hyperactivity and say, oh, this child has ADHD. That's not possible, right? There are so many other things that we look at from these domains: impulsivity, hyperactivity, inattention. Some children who have ADHD can function in a social setting. They can communicate. They will use their words. They will tell you whatever it is. They can even pick up on social cues, right? However, impulsivity is something you look at. Children who wouldn't think. They would have done something before thinking of the consequences. For some of us, we think about it, we go through the thought process, and then we do whatever it is we're doing because we understand what the consequences are. But for children who have ADHD, impulsivity is something that happens to them. They do things without thinking of the consequences and eventually think of the full consequence. Then inattention will be that a child is unable to focus on something. And what I found out also is not that they are unable to focus, right? What we're expecting them to focus on is non-preferred, is their less preferred activity. Because if they find something that is of keen interest, they can actually stay on task. They can do those things. That's why we would have people with ADHD who can be computer engineers, for instance, because that is their area of interest. They will stay on that and then be able to do everything regarding it. But if it's a less preferred activity, then they can't stay on task. They can't do the same. Then their hyperactivity sets in. Their hyperactivity is not allowing them to do what they're expected to do. That's from the ADHD angle. Dyslexia now, as the name implies, it affects a child's ability to read. Right? Read and sometimes comprehend. Some other components of dyslexia is short memory. Do you get? Information sometimes don't move from the short memory to the long-term memory, which causes them to forget things. You would wonder, oh, we taught them this today and tomorrow they can't remember. It's because it's something that comes to dyslexia, short-term memory. Information is not moving from the short-term memory to the long-term memory, which affects their ability to then read or be able to give back whatever it is that they have read, and even affects comprehension. Because if it's not moving, how then do I comprehend what it is? Most times for children with dyslexia, it will require multisensory approach. It could require that you explore every senses that they can use to learn before learning takes place. So there is definitely differences between these three, and if symptoms don't cover most domains, a child will not qualify for any of the diagnoses.
Brilliantly said. Brilliant. I think I was good. I was taking notes all through because these questions definitely recurring. People tend to. It's a trendy thing these days where people say, for example, they experience or they exhibit one particular feature of this, and they tend to term themselves as ADHD or something. And I like how you've highlighted that one particular feature of this doesn't qualify you to say that you are on that particular line, right? You have to experience a significant number of these things. And more than anything, this has been a very, very educating
Thank
rendition
you.
from your
Thank you.
madam. You do a lot of trainings. We do a lot of trainings, and you're interacting with a lot of therapists while still executing this your knowledge on firsthand in children. What's the importance of emotional intelligence when it comes to being able to render therapy services to children or people on the spectrum? And this is I want this to touch across families, because there's situations where there's in homes one person is autistic, the siblings aren't. And sometimes there's a lot of insensitivity with the way they communicate with the person who is on the spectrum. And this happens with homes, in environments, classrooms. In fact, the relationships between the person on the spectrum and caregivers around them. How important is emotional intelligence when managing the situations? And how do you teach and encourage people who are caregivers, parents, to be very emotionally intelligent when they come to dealing and interacting with people on the spectrum?
Okay, first off, I would say that you can't, something you don't understand, you cannot interact with. Do you get? First of all, it is important that whoever is in the life of individuals with autism has some knowledge of what autism really is. And what I mean by what autism really is to this particular individual that they are, are what are the challenges that this individual they're interacting with is experiencing. So it's not going to be a function of, oh, my uncle brother's daughter was doing this, but she can do this. This child is different from your,
Yeah,
genealogy right now. This is the challenges that this child is experiencing. Highlighting the challenges that is particular to a child is the first step. So you then know that these are the things that the child struggles with. Then it helps you in how you interact with the child. So let's say, for instance, I know that the child struggles with putting their words together, for instance, and then the child wants water. The child is trying to tell you they want water, but because you're hell bent on they have to use their words, for instance, then we have the outburst that then spirals into something really big. It is important that we know that this child, even though has words, has difficulty putting the words together to
yeah,
make what they need. So you create alternative way for them to communicate, alternative way to let you know that they want water. Some caregivers know that this child wants water, but they are insisting that the child says, I want water, when in fact the child is not at that time able to do that. Right? I would rather get a picture of water and ask the child, what do you want? The child points to water. Then I fill it in with the word, I want water. Good job letting me know you want water. Give water. In that process, you are also teaching. As against being in your own world and insisting that this is what you do at this time, knowing when to act is something that is important. It is important to teach before as against teaching in the heat of the moment, because that's also something that I've seen with you. Oh, you must do this now. What work have you put in place before then?
yeah, no,
So many
yeah,
people are requiring a skill that they haven't taught a child. You have to ensure that you have taught the child and you have even taught them, create scenarios, and then they see how these things are being used. Because yes, it is one thing to teach, it is another thing to put into practice what you have taught. And I'm sure even everyone can relate to that. We learn so many things in the classroom, for instance. If it is not put into practice, we will not be able to put to use whatever it is we have learned. So the same applies. Extending grace to individuals living with autism is of utmost importance. That when you're teaching, you were teaching at the table, for instance, but you've not taught them in the situation, and now this is the situation, you're insisting that they bring what you've done at the table and that you haven't practiced before into real scenarios. That wouldn't be emotionally intelligent, right? You also want to be able to pick up on cues when your child is, they give signs. I mean, we all give signs. When we're tired, it is that we're yawning or we're doing different things. The same way with our neurodiverse individuals, they have cues that they give. It is important that we pick up on those cues before escalation. They call these the escalation strategies. You want to pick up on these cues and then nip it in the bud before it gets out of hand. I know that, let's say my child is only able to sit for 45 minutes, for instance. Before 45 minutes, I want to start wrapping up so that I don't get to the point where after 45 minutes, my child starts throwing tantrums, my child starts doing this. That would be that the caregiver is not intelligent enough to know that the capability of the child. We know our children in different settings. When we're in these settings, this is what this child is possibly going to do. We want to before to ensure that these behaviors don't get out of hand, and even if they do happen, you have all you need to manage it and it doesn't escalate. You get it? So these are the things that is important for caregivers, families to know around their children, and even for siblings. We've seen situations where parents just expect that siblings should understand, when in fact siblings also are children who need attention. And sometimes siblings will relate with their sibling based on the fact that you are taking all the attention of of the family. So the parents need to be emotionally intelligent to pick up on these cues, even from siblings as well, to help them, to still create time for them, to teach them about these other siblings who might need, different kind of treatment in different ways, to teach them so that when they are teaching, the home environment is a learning place for the child as well, because everyone in the home setting knows what to do at different settings, because the parents will not always be there. Yeah, if we don't equip the siblings to able to interact with their brother or sister, then we're setting everyone up for failure. Knowing all of these things and acting before anything happens is really what makes the difference.
Brilliantly said. Madam, you have said something particularly that I want to lay a little bit of emphasis on, right? There's a popular saying in the space: if children are not going to learn how we teach, then we should probably learn to teach how they learn, which is what
Absolutely.
you've had very significantly. Um, in the home, in the home, how
Mhm.
important for the parents to recognize their responsibility as the first point of intervention for that child, and not just think it's something that they can it's a responsibility they could pass on to a therapist or an institution to just manage that. How important is it for parents to also learn that if we want our child to be better, then it's a responsibility that we have to learn to be part of? How important is that? Please highlight the importance of that, and what can parents do to learn these processes, to learn to do these things the right way in the absence of therapists or in the absence of whoever renders care to that particular child.
Okay, I will pick that up from things that I've seen happen and things that we've heard parents say. There's something we call behavioral contrast, yeah? And just let me go from the neurotypical to the neurodivergent. We've seen situations where children go to school and they're so well behaved because they understand the culture of the school, because they understand the routine, they know what to do from point A to point B, and everything is perfect. But when they're at the home front, it's like everything goes, and the children are going, wow, they're doing everything. We have that behavior contrast, right? If parents don't figure out, oh, this is how it happens in school, I can replicate this at home, then we'll continue to have these behavioral differences. Do you get? So also with our neurodivergence, we've seen situations where in the therapy center, the therapist is saying, this child doesn't even bother us. This child does everything we see. But at home, this child is not doing, parents can't even get the child to sit down. At that point, I believe parents will know that it is important to be able to follow through with whatever it is that the therapists are doing. It is important to be able to follow through, because then skills will not even be generalized. There's something we call generalization of skills. It means that the skills, you are able to take it from the table to, to the downtime, to different settings, and be able to repeat it with different people. How do we repeat with different people if the parents are not in on what is being done in therapy sessions or by the therapist? And think about when the parents have to drive with their child without the therapist. Things do happen. How then would they navigate it if they don't know what to do? So it is very important that parents know what to do. And from the angle of first responder, I will also look at it from advocacy point of view. As a therapist, I might not be there with the parents when you're going out with your child, and then somebody passes a remark, or your child is doing something and everybody is staring at you in a certain way. If you don't know, how then would you advocate for your child? From the angle of advocacy, from the angle of following through, from the angle of generalization of skills, it is important that parents are in on whatever it is that needs to be done for their child. The therapist is doing it, the parents are doing. Also, there are different faces to different people. The face that the parents see sometimes can be different from the face that the therapist see. So that even when they're seeing this face, they know how to help their child or help their children navigate whatever it is that is going on. You can also bring valuable insights we've seen situations when parents will be able to tell therapists, oh, my child is able to do this and this and that, or my child is not able to do this, or my child is not able to do this. That information alone helps the therapist or the behavior analyst to come in with robust strategies to help, regardless of wherever they are and with whomever they come across. When parents are going out, they leave their children with caregivers. If you do not know, how then do you tell the caregivers what to do? Get. So it is really important that parents are on board. It is important that parents follow through. It is important that parents teach everyone around them to follow through with the children so that skills can be generalized, so that parents can advocate for their children the right way.
Lovely, lovely. Parents, if you're parents on here, you have a child, I'm sure you've Madam has highlighted significantly the role you play. So it's a responsibility that you do not just pass on to somebody else. You have a very significant role to play. We've had this conversation extensively for about an hour now. We do have questions, which I'll take in a bit. I've thoroughly enjoyed myself. So we'll just get into questions real quick so we stay right on time. So this is from Mr. Francis. He says, considering our cultural differences and sensitivities, elaborate on how we can promote inclusion and acceptance in our society. I think we spoke a little bit about this before, so that's why I said elaborate, and how we can, as a society, how can we do better with promoting inclusion, but particularly to our cultural and religious differences.
So, for some of these things, we will not be able to approach it from the general to the specifics, right? We want to do from the specifics to the general. Start with your environment. Let's say we are in an office setting, for instance. Start with, first of all, putting system in place that includes about everyone. What do I mean? See, in a school setting, for instance, a child is able to sit, that is supposed to sit for 45 minutes through a lecture. And we know that for some of our individuals, 45 minutes, they will not be able to sit through that. Create the classroom in a way that even if the child is not sitting on the chair, there is a space for them to move around while still in the classroom learning. There's a place for them to go to when there are sensory overloads because of the things that are happening in the classroom at the time. Create a space for them to be able to go to. Because what I've seen happen is when there's a meltdown or something, teachers say, oh, please take this child out. Take this child out at this time because this child is interrupting the classroom. However, we could create a safe space in the classroom where the child goes into. We have the small kind of canopy or something that creates that black space, kind of blacks you out from the environment while still being in the environment. That's a way of creating inclusion in a classroom setting, right? So we have to start from where we are and then go on. Because what's happened, I was having this conversation with someone and they said, you know what, if they don't see that it's possible, then it's hard to get a buy-in. So we first of all need to show the possibility of an inclusive setting. How do we then do that? If we're a classroom teacher, start from your classroom. If you are, let's say, bus attendant or something, start from the bus. Just wherever you are, start from where you are. That way, people then see, oh, it's possible. It's been done here. If it's been done here, then we can do it here. If you own an organization, create a space where individuals can use their skills in that space. They don't have to interact with every other space in your workspace. They have their space, and you tell them, you know what, they're able to do this. My office is an inclusive space. See this individual who has this. This is what they like to do, and this is where their duty post is. This is what they're doing. This child who is very social, who likes to greet people, is the one at the reception who is saying, hello, you're welcome. That way people understand it and then buy it in. We first have to start from where we are and then gradually work our way up.
Well said. I'm taking something you said with this conversation because I like how it went just a classroom and it's something that's a area. In the context of intervention, there are a lot of conversations having, right? And parents are very, they want to know when their kids you should visit, go back, right? That conversation
is breaking, so I'm kind of not sure what I'm hearing.
Oh, can you hear me clearly now, madam?
Yes, I think this is better.
Okay, good. Sorry about it. I think the network is a little bit, it gets a little bit shaky at times. So I was saying, as a follow-up to something you said about schools, right? When it comes to rendering early intervention to children, there's a recurring conversation with parents. Parents are always eager to ask, when can I send my child back to a mainstream school? When can I? Parents are looking forward to that. It's something that is very particular. I want you to highlight some notable things that mainstream schools can adopt to accommodate children with special needs, right? I understand that shadow services are very helpful. You could throw more light on that. But what more can the school themselves do to accommodate children who are coming from intervention centers and who are trying to get a hang of, a mainstream environment with their classmates and be accommodated properly?
One thing first would be differentiated instruction, right? You want to teach, have a way you differentiate instruction in such a way that children who have special needs can hear this instruction and be able to give back the necessary response that is required. You're teaching the general classroom, but there's also a breakdown for this special child in your classroom. If it's color coding things that you write on the wall, let's say every other person you use a black marker or you use the white chalk, for because of this individual that is in your classroom you're using different colors just to ensure that it catches their attention and they can tell the difference between whatever it is that you're writing on the board, and then use varying example to meet the level of the students in the classroom, as well as examples to meet the need of this child in your classroom. So let's say for instance, we're teaching osmosis, or whatever it is, for instance. You want to bring actual things, as against defining osmosis and diffusion.
Yeah.
You want to bring actual things that a child can see. They relate with this thing that they can see. And even though you're saying osmosis, whenever you mention osmosis, they can play back this little simple practical that you've done, and then they know this is what you mean by osmosis. Let's move a little bit away from abstract teaching to actually conceptualizing, putting concepts into things that are relatable. Also allowing children to give responses in the way that they know how to. What I've seen in schools is you have to write your exams. If you're not writing your exam, then you don't know it. There are other ways to assess that a child knows things even without writing. You ask them the question, they can tell you. You ask them the question, they can draw it, and when you see the drawing, you know that this is exactly what they mean. So allowing for the different ways children learn, allowing for the different ways they process information, allowing them to give it back to you in their own way, not exactly how you are giving to them, but in the way that they understand it. Because think about it, we all understand things in different ways, really. If people who are on this live now have to retell you what I have said, everyone will retell it in different ways. So if that is the case for neurotypicals, then why shouldn't we adapt that for neurodivergent as well? So allowing them to give things the way that they understand it, allowing them to have the sensory breaks in between that they need. A child would need to move around every 15 minutes. Yes, the subject is for 45 minutes, but allowing this child to get up every 15 minutes, move around, and come back to their classroom would be something that a school can do. This child needs to engage in verbal stimming, or stimmings to regulate themselves, allowing for this within the classroom. Somebody is there to ensure that the child goes, do whatever it is that they need to do. They're ready again to take in, allowing for those simple but very important things to our individuals is a way that a school can ensure that it is included. Also, when do I know that my child is ready for mainstream? Why are they not in the mainstream in the first place, right? Some things that would be considered is the child able to learn, how mainstream is. If somebody is standing over there and teaching, is the child able to learn at that time, at that way, or the child still requires a one-on-one pressing on and the likes to learn? That's one thing. Is the child able to cohabit with other people? Because there are some children who engage in, injurious behaviors, who are able to. Has that been handled? If your child is able to stay in a classroom setting without hurting anyone, without having major meltdown, then yeah, your child should be in the classroom. And then are they able to learn at the same pace with what I mean by at the same pace? I don't mean, they have to get all the definitions, 10 definitions or 9 definitions. That's not what I mean. But I mean that when the teacher breaks down concepts, are they able to get it? Do you understand? I was having a conversation with someone recently, and we're saying that in schools that operate a British curriculum, they don't necessarily set different questions for their learners. However, they allow for the learners to access this question in the way that they can. What do I mean? For every other neurotypicals, they give them the question paper, you read and understand by yourself, then provide answers. But for children who are neurodivergent in their classroom, they will give question paper, but somebody is allowed to be there, read the question to them, even break down the explanation to them in the way they understand, so that they can give back. You see, that is some accommodation, that's some modification that the school is, tapping to ensure that they accommodate. So also, is a school, any school you want to take your child, are they able to go the extra mile for your child? Are they able to ensure that your child learns what they need to learn, right? And also thinking about, if a child is in a school where they are doing 10 subjects, is a school going to allow you to say, oh, your child doesn't have to do all the 10 subjects? Is it 3 they can accommodate? Do the 3, and your knowledge will be assessed based on these 3 that you have done. Those are some things that school can put in place, and those are things parents should actually look out for before taking their children into a mainstream school setting. Is the school going to allow for a shadow to come in? Is the school going to allow for a shadow to reteach whatever it is they have taught? Is the school able to allow to get feedback from the shadow to say, oh, the child is getting it, but the child would need more material? Those sort of things are things parents should look out for before enrolling your child into a mainstream school setting.
Thoroughly insightful, beautifully said. You have significantly addressed a lot of topics with that rendition. Mr. Francis has another question. This particular question I really like, because we've done a lot of conversations about people on the spectrum, the neurodivergent candidates. Mr. Francis is asking, could you speak more on how we can prioritize self-care and well-being for caregivers and family members of individuals with autism? And because there's a lot of attention on the particular individual, but people around them, it takes a lot of mental and physical commitment. How can they manage their personal well-being to ensure that at every point in their service, in their process of rendering their service to the child, they are doing it at their best possible strength? How can they manage themselves? What practices can they do best? This is a question for Mr. Francis. Please take it away, madam.
Okay, I would start off from something that I've said earlier to saying that ensuring everyone around you understands your child's need, because that way you can take time out without worrying what is going to become of your child. Because what's happening is parents think, oh, no one else can handle my child. If I'm not there, hell is going to break loose. If I'm not there, the whole world is going to stop moving. If I'm not there, if you ensure that people that are in the life of your child know 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 things about your child and know what to do in different situations, it gives you a peace of mind to go do something else. Because you then get a time away from your child, you're able to at least attend to your needs. Because what I've seen happen is sometimes parents give all and focus on this child, not attending to them. We all have needs. We all have our goals we want to aspire, we want to, whatever it is we want to achieve. But leaving it all and attending to a child takes a toll on caregivers or people around the child. So ensuring that everyone around your child, everyone interacting with your child knows how to, relate with your child is the first step, if you ask me. Seeking help when it is needed. Will definitely be my second. We don't have to do it all alone. We can seek help to say, oh, I would like to do this, or I am struggling with this at this time. There shouldn't be any judgment to that. Yes, you are the parents, but we're allowed to not know some things at a particular time. Seeking for help when you do not know what to do is another way. That way you are sure that you have somewhere to fall back on when you find yourself stuck. That way you're sure that you don't have to figure things out on your own. You can always reach out to someone who helps in the process of figuring out, someone stepping in when you can't. And then, we going back to goals. What I mean goals, before you had this child, what were those things you wanted to do? What were those things that you have put on hold? This is the time to bring them up, because you have to be at your optimal, I'm lost for words right now, but you're able to optimal functioning. You're functioning optimally before you are able to attend to your child. Someone says you can't pour from an empty cup. Sometimes parents feel guilty that why should I be going on holiday when my child is there? If your cup is empty, you will not be able to help your child there. Knowing that taking care of yourself is also part of the intervention process will help a long way to better serve your child. If you do not take care of yourself, there will be times that you'll be frustrated and you find yourself taking out your frustration on your child, which wouldn't yield the desired result. So knowing that it is part of the process helps you prioritize. It helps you know that I also need to take care of myself to be able to take care of my child. I need to attend to some of my goals to ensure that I'm moving forward. That way you are propelled to see that your child moves forward. I would like to stop at that for now.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. We have been on here for about an hour. We have, Madam, thank you so much for doing this with us. So we have one final question before we wrap up. This is from Madam Omomi. and it says, "What is tough love in autism training, and how do we inculcate it? Also, is it applicable to all autistic kids? Tough love. This is a very unique question. What is tough love in autism training? Is it something?
If I understand this question very well, tough love will be, you know, denying, or let me call it delaying gratification at this time because you know the greater good that you intend to do with whatever it is. So let's say, for instance, let me come again from the angle of neurotypicals, because I like to do this,
Yeah,
sometimes that,
I like to make it very practical and relatable.
exactly. Think about it. Your child is allergic to sugar, but your child wants to eat sugar so badly. And you know that once your child eats sugar, they're going to be on the bed for how many days?
Probably.
How would you navigate that situation? You will do all that you can to ensure that your child doesn't eat sugar.
True.
It's the same thing. I know that if my child does not learn this skill, if my child does not work with me to navigate situation, it's going to be a bigger mess later. I will do all that I can within my power to ensure that this child learns this skill. So let me give you a very recent example. So I went to see a child, and this child was crying, wants to get off the table, wants to do. So I told this child, I know you have your words. I know you can do it. I'm not leaving this child to figure it out on her own. Get me? I'm giving the child the words. I just need the child to give me back the words exactly as I'm telling you. The child is crying. I just tell you, I need a break. I need a break. I need a break. The child is crying, but I know the child can tell me I need a break. And I also know that over the years, the child has learned to meet their needs by engaging in this crying and physical resistance to get into escape. This child is just about 4, right? I'm imagining when the child is 10, when I can't hold the child anymore. When the child is 15, when I can't hold it now. I think about it and I say, you know what? This is the best time to take this teaching. And I'm saying, tell me I need a break, then you'll be able to go. Tell me I need a break. Okay. We were at it for minutes. The child eventually said, I need a break. I said, excellent job. You can go. It is very tough. But I know that it's a skill that needed to be learned now. Otherwise, the child will go on doing things to get what they want. I want to ensure that they
Yeah.
have that skill. And then instead of engaging in all these behaviors, they would just use their words, because now they have learned that using their words is what will get them what they want. So if that's what we call tough love, yeah, this is tough because we know the bigger picture. We know what is possible. We know what is possible if we do the right thing, and we know what is possible if we do not do the right thing. So what would we rather do? The right thing, yeah? Exactly. Exactly. Parents will say, oh, he's crying, leave him. What you're doing is, every time you're not doing anything, teachings are also going on. The child is learning that
Yeah.
once I cry, mommy and daddy allows me. Is that what we
Exactly.
want the child to learn? Or would rather teach the child to use what they are able to do? And when I say words now, I don't mean every child has to use words.
Words. Yeah.
Listen to what I say, able to do. Is the child just able to pick up picture and show you that this is what they want? Then that's what they should be doing. Teach them to pick up the picture and show you that I need a break, or I want to go to the restroom. Immediately, you let them go. Over time, the child figures, oh, whenever I'm crying, I don't get what I want. But whenever I communicate in the way that
Mm.
I'm able to, I get exactly what I want. So yes, that's tough love. But I believe it's good now, so that they have the skill that they need to function in the larger society.
A very illustrative definition of tough love, and I can see how it can work in neurodivergent and also neurotypical children, because parents
Oh,
tend to, my child is crying, let them have their way. And it's important that they learn these things in the process. Madam Dami, this has been a thoroughly insightful conversation. See, I don't want to say that I'm already a behavioral analyst, because I've learned quite a lot from this conversation myself. Let's wrap up with your final words. This is an active space. The goal is to ensure that people stay aware. These practices are being impacted in the daily lives of children living with autism, directly. We want to. That is why we have these conversations. That is why we advocate for this cause. Let's wrap this up with your final words. What would you say to ensure that people continue to do this? We continue to impact society with the best amount of knowledge about the situation that we can. Please take it away for us, madam.
okay. First thing I'm going to say is, if you can think it, then you can do it. So instead of waiting to say, oh, the government is not doing this person is not doing that, let's start from our own little space. Because when you start and it succeeds, it is easier to sell to someone else to say, oh, see, when this child was doing this is what I was able to do. You can do it. The child can learn. I've done it and I've seen it work. So let's continue to do, starting from our own space and putting in the work, because it is only by putting in the work and people see that it works, that's when you get their buying. Also, um, instead of waiting for a label, figure out what the challenges of your children are and ensure that they get the help they need at that time to navigate this challenge there. Yes, diagnosis might come later. What's the worst that can happen? Right? Imagine if you don't do anything at all. If you started doing something and then you figure out, oh, nothing was wrong, it was just a delay, then you would have done the child good. But if you weren't doing anything and you're waiting for diagnosis, and then you figure out, oh, this is what's happened, and I could have made better progress if I started earlier, then it will be a lifetime full of regrets. You don't want to be in that space when you're regretting when you could have started doing something. So wherever we find ourselves, let's do what we can. And as professionals, let's speak up for individuals when we find things not going well. Let's not say, oh, it's not my business, because it is really everybody's business. If it's happening around you, then it's happening around you for a reason. It's happening around you for the opportunity to speak up, to speak to people about possible challenges and possible solutions. So let's keep doing it, because it's a teamwork that makes the dream work. I can't do it alone. My host here can't do it alone. And a couple of other people, we need to do it, and we need to keep speaking up to get more people to understand the possibilities that are with our neurodivergent children. Thank you so much for having me. Therapy on Wheels is committed to ensuring that help goes out there to children, regardless of where they are, regardless of the location, regardless of what the families think. Oh, I don't want people to know. Wherever it is, what is important is that this child gets help. Let's not deny them the help that they need.
Lovely, beautifully said, madam. This has been a groundbreaking conversation. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. To those who joined along the way, this is the Will Lend Your Voice 1000 Voices for Autism series, proudly brought to you by EK Foundation for Autism. It's an avenue where we have these conversations to ensure that autism advocacy is being amplified in the very best way that we can. Our guest is the amazing founder of Therapy on the Wheels, an experienced expert in behavioral analysis with over 11 years active experience. And I mean, trust me, man, if you missed all that has gone on the conversation for the past 1 hour, you should definitely be looking forward to watch every bit of it. Because, bruh, I was part of it, and I already feel like I have the experience to take on all these challenges. I really enjoyed every bit of it. One important thing I'm going to take away that I'll leave you with, I guess I said quite a lot. If the child is not learning how you teach, then you should inquire to teach how best they can learn. It's our responsibility to ensure that consistency is maintained, that emotional intelligence and grace is applied to how we communicate with people on the spectrum. A big thank you to our guest, Madam Dami, again. Thank you for finding time to do this with us. It's indeed an honor having this conversation with you. To everybody who sent in a question, Mr. Francis, Mr. Momi, thank you so much for being part of this. To all our guests who have been with us since the 12 o'clock, so since 12 noon, thank you so much for being part of this. I'm sure you know quite a lot now, so go into the world and implement all that you have. My name is Epic.
Know that we've got you. So whenever you think you're stuck, just always reach out to us, and then we'll be able to
Most
help.
definitely you have your back. Have your back. Most definitely. My name is Epic. To catch you again on Lend Your Voice 1000 Voices for Autism series, probably brought to you by AK Foundation for Autism. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye, madam.